Hello.
Oh no.
What's going on
I
here?
look haggard. Holy cow. Okay, hello. My name's Daniel Agee. Welcome to Endless Appreciations. I have my co-host here, Sam Hurd from Sam Hurd Photography. He didn't spend very much time on naming his business. And
That is something
Yeah.
I tell people. If I could go back and change anything, I probably wouldn't have chosen my name. I think there's a tendency to, when you're starting out, like using your name creates a bit more of a personal connection between you and your clients who are like figuring out whether or not to hire this person who's only been working a year, right? And when it's like your name, there's a little bit more of a genuineness,
feeling.
genuine connection between who they're hiring and you versus, some random, I'm trying to think of the most hipster name ever.
I mean, what you would have chosen would have been like creatives in love, your tagline that you won't let go.
For creatives
had
in love.
forever.
Yes, I
Yeah,
think that is an
so-
excellent tagline. But
It's like
no, I would
Johnny
not-
Ives from Love or Ink or whatever. There.
Yeah, I
See?
can see that. The no, at the time I probably would have been like Birds in a Feather or some stupid.
Yeah, slap a bird on it.
Yeah. I remember being so impressed because it was like the last push, probably the last year that Flash was still a thing for websites, and a few photographers that were also just like a year ahead of me getting started, but had just enough momentum and money to throw down for like a custom Flash website. I was so jealous of this one guy, Gabe Aceves, film photographer, and he had this beautiful like pencil sketch drawn scene of like a deer coming into the hill, and then the deer would just kind of prance, and then another deer would come in, and it was a very film outdoor photographer website. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to get a Flash website. So glad I didn't go with Flash, obviously. But
So I got my start designing Flash websites on the internet. That was one of my very, very first things. That's how I learned to code, was using ActionScript, which is what they called their coding language for Flash. Mm-hmm. And the first cartoon I ever animated was of a bird jumping off of a cliff and then running along and jumping over a goat, and then the goat barfed out a tin can that it ate, and then the same bird came out of the tin can.
Oh,
it was cinematic magic to 13-year-old Daniel, who was very pleased with himself.
That's pretty cool. I tried to teach myself how to do Flash, and I just never did it. Never got good enough. I remember downloading a bunch of like reverse Flash or not reverse, but like things that would reverse engineer a Flash website somehow, and try and give you some code that you could then sort of hack together. I can't remember what all that was called, but you would get like the SWF file.
Yeah,
isn't it the Macromedia's? It was Macromedia at the time. It wasn't even Adobe.
Yeah,
man, those are good old days.
We bought. I can't actually share that story publicly. Never mind.
I was about to share a story I can't share publicly.
Yeah!
What's going on with those days on the internet? That's so funny.
But I got kicked off of MySpace. My first MySpace account died because
that would have been a better
I embedded Flash over the ads. I had like a whiteboard floating above my thing that I got from my friend Dustin, because he had one and he had like put his face on it, and then like it would save cookies so you could like draw and leave notes for your friends on my MySpace. But then no dice. I covered up ads, therefore you're out of there.
Yeah, those are the days. The internet was kind of a wild place. I think that was still a time where people were literally, and it's easy to forget. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people listening to this had maybe hadn't even thought of this, but people were scared to even put their credit card into a website. It was like, I don't know. There's a lot of anxiety attached with doing anything financially related. One story I can share, I remember there was this weird. I was really into acquiring music equipment at the time, buying as much as I could to
At that
record
time,
with. Well,
like you're
yes,
not now. Come on, you have like a theremin floating around your house.
Yeah, I do.
Focus up.
But I came across this random website that was like just kind of like an aggregator that would just, it looked like it was its own place, but it was just linking to a lot of other things somehow. Anyway, I was able to download their, cart to Macromedia, like download the website. This is how unsecure things were back then. Download it to Macromedia, Dreamweaver, open it through Dreamweaver, change the price of the $30 microphone I wanted and made it $15, and was able to inject that amount and complete the checkout for $15.
Did it get shipped?
Oh yeah, I got the
Hell yeah.
Yeah, then
Look
they
at
blocked
you.
my account, obviously, and were very pissed.
Yeah, because you thefted.
Oh, I was
'Cause
like,
you did
"There's no
minor
way
thefts.
this is gonna work. This is not gonna work. It's not
That
my
is-
fault if this works."
That is always the criminal's best defense. This shouldn't work. This is your fault, not mine.
Hey, you would have had to pay someone a lot more money to tighten up and audit your security. I've just done it for you for $15.
Wow. Well, minus the microphone. $15 in a microphone.
Well, I was really scared as a little college kid because I got a really threatening email. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to jail. I'm going to freaking jail for this." Actually, it's not even about the money. It's probably the mere act of doing that is pretty consequential. I'm just not realizing. Not a big deal. They went out of business. They weren't a reputable company.
Yeah, that'll show them. Yeah, they weren't reputable, says local thief. I love this.
No, they were awful. They were like they would charge more by sitting on top of like Musician's Friend or, some of the actual, Guitar Center, some of the actual brick and mortar places. And then, anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, that is just an example of how crazy the internet was back then.
Used to be wild back then. Now it's just Facebook.
That's like not even hard at all to do. Anyway, now it's just, This is
So
why
I'm
Facebook
having-
never let us customize our pages.
Which was very rude of them. Mark, I know you're a listener, so let us inject Flash into our Facebook profiles,
Yes.
please, and thank you.
It's been long enough now. We'd be the only two people that would do that.
So I'm having a crisis of not confidence, the confusion. Okay. I just wanted to sound very dramatic by saying I was having a crisis of confidence because it sounds very fun. What I'm having is a crisis of, I have a paradox of choice, maybe, an odd thing. Okay, so here's, as you know, I've been looking at cameras, talking about cameras, experienced the Z8. What a beautiful camera that makes the worst shutter noise in the world. Earlier this week, Sony released the updated version of the A7C. Now it's the A7C2 and the A7CR. Sony,
Yeah, I know.
get at me, man. I would love to name your cameras something better.
What does the 7 stand for?
It's just
Something with the sensor size?
no, I don't think so. Maybe
The release number event?
I don't know.
6?
The seven part is not the important part. The C part for compact is the important part.
That I get.
So it's the beautiful, full frame of like a A7 IV. This is stupid. Oh my God. Names are dumb.
But it's the second version of the one that you've had on indefinite loan from me. The A7.
Well, yeah. So that's the spoiler here is you have the original version. I have shot very little with it. That's my fault, right? Like I used it for a couple of video things I was recording, and am about to start, unfortunately, doing more of that. But the idea here is that my needs as a photographer are varied and bananas at the moment, right? Like my personal work is almost exclusively shot on the GFX at this point. I take the Q2 around. Basically, I just don't want to sell the Q2. I love it too much. I don't want to. It's a beautiful object. It's a beautiful thing. It has sentimental value. I want to keep it. So I know that the obvious solution here is to sell the sentimental thing and just buy whatever I want, whatever I need with all the money, because it's an expensive,
Take
nice
a picture
thing.
of the sentimental thing, and then you can sell it and let it go. Okay.
I can't. That's not.
What if I 3D print it? We like laser scan it, 3D print
You want to borrow it? You hated the Q.
No, I don't want to borrow it at all.
It's so Q2 is
interest.
so nice.
Okay.
Oh, it's so nice.
I know people love it. Don't get me wrong.
Anyway.
The Q is the only one I've got direct experience with, just for anybody listening out there.
And he hated it. It's a whole thing. So last night I took the A7C, the original one, the one that you've lent to me, to go take some pictures. And I did not have a great time. And this is on me. All of this is my fault. This is not the camera's fault. This is not... I took it while walking the dogs during sunset. I took a couple of nice sunset snapshot photos. I didn't spend intentional time with it. I'm doing that again. But the photos themselves, I had a couple of issues with.
Oh.
Here are my issues. I don't know what to do with sharp photos anymore.
Okay.
Right. So the Midicon on the GFX does it's very soft. It's very, bokeh forward. It's very chromatic aberration and shifty shift, fun colors, whatever, which is what I love about it. I think I didn't realize I felt this way until I got my hands on a 100 megapixel medium digital format camera that pictures are too sharp these days.
They are. It's a weird thing to... I'm trying to remember the first lens and camera I felt that. Oh, it's coming back to me. I was like, wow, this lens is too sharp. And I can't remember. I think it was something Nikon. I think it was still in my DSLR days, but yeah.
It's just too sharp, man. And that's part of this, right? Is that images are just too sharp now. And so I wasn't using any of the adapted lenses that you gave me for the Sony. I was just using, I want to say the 35. So 1.8.
The really small 35?
Yeah,
the great little lens.
Yeah. It's a beauty. It's super light. I was able to do it on a hand strap. So I was walking both dogs in one hand and
did I give you the hand strap?
photos with the other. You did.
Yeah. It's a nice little setup.
Yeah, Peak Design. We love Peak Design. Bookmark it. Put a note in it. I'm going to become best friends with Peak Design. I'm manifesting it back to my problem at hand. Photos are too sharp, and I don't know what to do about that.
Make a de-sharpening plugin or action or something, which feels so wrong in so many ways.
Yeah. So I think this is part of my thing is that I, for years leading up in, my growth in my time as a professional photographer, it was all in over editing all the time, right? 2009 to 2012, there was this odd shift when our cameras were good, but they weren't great. And so it required a lot of work to push the images to great. A lot of sharpening, a lot of Photoshop actions, a lot of
totally rad
tutorials.
Actions, probably, to be specific. They were the kings on the block back before Visco. Yeah.
That's the one. Right. I was an early Visco girly. So, it is what it is. We put a lot of effort into making them look better than they were. And then there was this golden, I would call golden era, right? Where the D90 came out and the D800 and the whatever.
People forget the Nikon D90 was the first viable video on a DSLR camera. A lot of people think that Canon was the first because of the Mark III, but the D90, it had the worst rolling shutter ever, but it was usable for very static, easy shots. It was beautiful.
Those sounded different, right? So the usable rolling shutter bad.
Well, if the camera was moving much, it was bad. It was the whole thing was in jello. But if it was on a tripod and you didn't have any super fast moving object going in and out of the frame,
gotcha.
It was great.
Yeah, so we entered this golden era where photos looked like the photos we wanted to with relative little work, right? The 5D is gorgeous. I adore the 5D. A few photographers on glass right now have like picked up the 5D for like $300 and are shooting with it because it renders colors so
Oh,
nicely,
yeah.
even though it's like a 12,
It's like an older CCD
14,
sensor
15.
or something that I
Yeah,
can't remember.
it's like the original 12 megapixel full frame.
Yeah.
But it's, you know,
It's similar probably to the sensor that I love the colors from, that crappy little point and shoot Canon from like 2001 that I have.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just like renders really nicely and it's beautiful. And that's, you know, like there's like those 5 or 6 years where photos were just like coming out of the digital cameras and being the digital photos we wanted them to be. And now I feel like we're in this weird area where everything is too much. Right? You know, like there are too many megapixels. Everything's too sharp. Everything is too. I need a little crust, right? Like a little, a little crunch.
I've said for years, I don't understand why the name brand camera manufacturers, or anyone really, but especially the name brand ones, don't create like an art series of their own that it's specifically built, the lenses in that series, to have flare and not have as many coatings and be a little crusty and organic and not like overdone in a way that like Lens Baby does with like crazy effects that just look weird.
Unfortunately,
but high quality lenses, unfortunately.
Oh, I have unfortunate news that Lens Baby might be doing this now. If you haven't checked out Lens Baby recently, some of their lenses slap.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. And you know, credit to them. They've been pushing that kind of artistic hardware since forever. But Canon, like I've more than once considered going back and buying the 50 1.2 EF because the flare on it is so beautiful. And yeah, it only was really built to resolve to maybe 20 megapixels or something. So with any of the newer mirrorless cameras, the sensors are going to out resolve, and it's when you zoom in 1:1, it's going to look like a little hazy and soft no matter what. But the character aspects of it and the fundamental way that we view and experience photos has really only gotten smaller, right? I mean, these are tiny. Most people don't print their photos. A simple print back in the day would have been like 4 times the size of an iPhone screen. We don't need all this resolution, you know, unless you do an excessive amount of cropping. But I would argue now, given the, I don't even want to say the word, but the ability for AI to upres and create higher resolution images without having a high res source file, you don't even need the 100 megapixel starting point or the 50 megapixel starting point.
Whoa, hey, you keep that slander to yourself.
You could have a 12 megapixel, or like I did. I shot a little session with my 4 megapixel Canon, whatever that camera is.
G4 power shot.
And I upresed it to 12 megapixels, 4 times the resolution, and it looked great. So I totally agree with you. What are we doing with these 100 megapixel, or you know, having to? And the lenses now are over-engineered and designed in a way to be a little more future-proof. I don't know what they're built to resolve. Probably 100 megapixels, like the Canon 50 1.2 RF, which also has kind of a cool flare. But man, it's just, guys, let's half the price. It's a character lens. Most photographers will buy them just to have and play with, and because photographers think of themselves as artists, and many are, not everyone, but many are, and the more tools to paint with, the better. They would buy it. And so it's funny to me. And then you get if the native brand created the art lens, you still would get the benefits of, I think, the autofocus being probably better than what Lens Baby could offer, or any third party. So yeah, it's wild. But I think we should keep talking about sharpness. There's one thing that I've always found interesting is I think, especially before you saw in live view exactly what was on what was going to be photographed on your screen, like back in the DSLR days. I think there was a lot of ambiguity or confusion or just gray area between sharpness and focus. And I think a lot of people would mistake a soft photo, thinking the lens isn't very sharp, but it's actually the lens being missing focus, right? I think
Yep.
a lot of photographers would just converse and actually be referring to two different things, unknowing to one another. That like, oh yeah, this lens is really sharp. And what they're referring to in that statement a lot of times is it nails focus, which is actually way more a function of the camera body usually than it is the lens. I mean, the lens definitely plays a part in that, but it's funny to me because using the Canon 50 1.0 EF, which was discontinued because it was considered soft and poor to focus. Now using it on the EF or the RF mount adapted, it's a totally usable lens. Now it acquires focus really well, but it's still a soft lens. It's not super sharp. No matter how good the focus is, there is a little softness, especially against like high contrasted areas.
I need it.
It's a great lens. But it's amazing to me that like the lens that was discontinued almost a decade ago, that was made a couple decades even before that, can still be like have new life breathed into it with all the new mounts that are out there. It's kind of awesome. But anyway, we should keep talking about sharpness. There's another aspect to it of sharpening in post, right? When you're actually editing. And that's different than like referring to sharpness, in my belief, in the lens or in the, capture of the shot. It's my process has always been, there's a certain order of operations that I always stick to. And the amount that you sharpen something totally depends on the end result viewing size of the image. So a lot of people...
Say more. Talk to me here, Goose.
A lot of people are tempted to sharpen the full res, 6,000 pixel wide image, right? Get that sharpened. But as soon as you resize it down to 1,500 pixels or whatever for Facebook or a blog or something like that, it's throwing away pixels now. So the sharpening process, whether it's in Lightroom or I still use an action in Photoshop, just because it's almost like a mental barrier to
because you just like being an old man from 2006. I get it.
Well, there's this last step where anything I'm going to post on my blog or on Instagram, I export to my desktop, no sharpening, then bringing it into Photoshop and running that action one at a time. Usually that extra little amount of barrier and friction will cause me to notice something that I need to fix still in the edit, or cut an image out that I decide not to share. So it's an artificial thing. It's not necessary, but it helps me mentally to just make sure I'm surfacing the very best stuff to what I want to share. But at the end of the day, the fact that you resize, if you sharpen too much with the high res file and then you resize, what I've seen is it actually gets excessively soft depending on how much smaller you go. And that's because sharpening tends to just do something to the edges of, like, literally on a pixel level of the frame to create a little more intensity, and I think it throws away pixels. And so when you compress it down, I mean, compression is a bad word for it, but when you make the resolution smaller, you are now losing some of that data. And anyway, at the end of the day, I tend to see softer images. So my order of operations has always been, I just keep the sharpening default to whatever Lightroom's import sharpening is. I don't mess with it at all. It looks fine.
That's why.
I export, I resize to the most likely viewing size. So if I know it's on Instagram, I'll resize to 2,500 pixels, I think it is. And my blog, it's like similar-ish. Then I sharpen when it's resized. And then I would add grain if I was going to add grain, which I'm in and out of doing. And that's the other thing. If you add grain before resizing the image, the grain also kind of compresses it on itself and creates a softer image. Yeah. But sharpening and grain aren't that different from one another. It's just that sharpening is done on like a pixel level, super, punched in there, and grain is done as like a giant mask of everything, but they're very similar. The thing is, when you have an insanely sharp photo from your source image, it's weird to think about like how you deal with that order now. I don't know. It's always been a bit of a thing, but I'm now remembering shooting with the Phase 1 did have that excessive sharpness in a way that I remember having to kind of pull back and I specifically made an action to unsharpen a little bit, not an unsharp mask, which is actually adding sharpening, but literally it was like, and it wasn't like clarity, negative clarity or anything. It was literally like unsharpening, just a touch.
So
anyway,
I'm a basic boy, right? So my action has been import, edit, and my edits are like very professional. Let me tell you, I'm not just hitting auto and then tweaking stuff. No siree. I am doing that.
Wow.
It's okay. You know how many people hit auto, Sam? So many of us.
A lot. Yeah.
I'm gonna make a shirt called Auto Club. It'll just be the little button. a little button. Anyway, so like I keep it pretty basic, and then like I do, I don't know, between 10 to 30 clarity and a little bit of texture, and then I pull down dehaze because everything's too contrasty these days. Oh my god, we sound like old men. Just yelling at clouds.
I add a little dehaze, so I don't know what you're talking about.
You add dehaze? Wow.
Like +5, like nothing crazy.
Oh yeah, I'm like a negative 10 to 20 now. But this is also a new thing that's come up with the GFX, right? So all of like this whole thing is predicated on the massive the massive files, right? I understand that this started with me complaining about file sizes being too big and too many megapixels, and then my main shooter right now is 102 or 103 megapixels or whatever. So the once I export, I don't do anything after that. I have that same problem, but I'm only uploading the glass, and so full res images are great, and we will resize for you depending on where it's being shown. LOL, that still can cause the little problems that Sam's talking about, but
yes. Yeah, and actually the one thing I get a lot is people asking how something along the lines of how are your images, how do they pop on Instagram so well or whatever. And the very last step, even if I sharpen using my action in Photoshop, once I get it the image into the Instagram app, the very last thing I do is add a little like 15 maybe 20 sharpening in the Instagram app. It's the very last step is adding that Instagram sharpening.
Yeah,
just a little bit, but
yeah, sharpen it just for you.
The last thing you do when and so for the full res files that I send to clients, I leave them more or less unsharpened. I think I have my export settings set to sharpen for screen standard, which is a very light amount of sharpening, and it's only because you don't want to sharpen it again so that the full res image looks amazing, and then the client's printed as a 4:6 or something. It's going to look weird. And this is being like excessively picky, by the way. I bet a lot of people wouldn't even notice. But I just err on the side of I don't know what size my clients are going to ultimately experience via printing or on a screen. They might have it on a giant 70-inch TV at their home. I have no idea. Yeah. So I just leave the sharpening sort of untouched, and and then hope for the best.
So these images to this all ties together, I promise. So I'm shooting with this camera, right? The A7C, and everything came back too sharp. Like to me, it felt nauseatingly sharp. And that's I'm stealing that from Ryan Muirhead, because that's how he described sharp photos once. He said nauseatingly sharp, and I said, "Ooh, I like that. That fits in my soul." So credit to Ryan. I stole your words. I guess I credit him now. That's less stealing. Not a thief like Sam and your microphones. So I have developed a pretty substantial vibe and look with my photography over the last few months with using the Midicon paired with the GFX. And I've shot some with my Q2 in there, and like getting the images to match isn't really a thing that I try to do right with those, because like it's very clearly a Leica image versus not a Leica image. And so I don't, there's not much I can do around that, right? Like, is the Q2 too sharp? Probably, but it like bothers me a little less because it's an adorable thing that I love, and I have used it for the last like 18 months before I got the GFX as my daily shooter from your Camera Emporium. And so like this, as I need to purchase a mirrorless camera, because I keep randomly booking gigs here in Baltimore, and we'll occasionally second shoot with you and other folks. It's like, okay, I need to have an updated mirrorless camera. For me, I need to shoot some video for glass, for glass stuff. You have heard the dreaded news here first. Glass will have a YouTube channel sometime. I think that's what I'm going to do this. I think that's what I'm going to do this winter. Just be a hermit and get into video. I know. I love glass. And glass needs me to be a content
need
creator.
You to step up. Yeah,
so
glass needs you.
I shall step up for the thing I love. Anyway, so like I'm trying to like split the difference on all these things that I need this camera to be, this next camera purchase, right? I need it to be a camera for me to be able to shoot an event on solo or to shoot video with. I also need it to create images that look like me and feel like me. Mm-hmm. And this sharpness is not doing it for me, right? And so I know that your answer to this question is going to be preset, but you shoot with a lot of different cameras. A lot of your photos look the same. They have the same vibe. How do you decide amongst yourself when you're choosing? Because like you recently had the Z9 and the colors are better on the Z9 than the R3. So, sorry to Canon. It's just the facts. But you stuck with Canon. And so like, but the photos that you took with the Z9 aren't that distinguishably different. Right. Because of your preset and your edit. But how do you talk to me, man? Talk to me here.
It's a whole lot of things that are coming into play. First of all, I think I'm fairly consistent in how I light people, and that is for sure the most important thing. Can't tell you how many people have sent me samples of like, hey, I got your preset and it doesn't look good on my picture. And I'm like, oh, okay, send me the picture. And I'm like, oh, I would never light them like this. And not because it's bad light. It's just, it might be just, I would just never light somebody like how they lit them. So there's that aspect. The other one is, I really, really, really quite often, most of the time, shoot very wide open, which keeps a very shallow depth of field look, depending on how close I am to my subject. It keeps the natural vignette of most lenses, so that adds a certain feel consistently to everything. I guarantee you, if I started shooting with a 2.8 lens or stopped down to 5.6 or 8 or something like that, you would be like, oh, wow, yeah, your style's really changed. Like editing style, you would think, has really changed when I would be using the exact same preset, right? It's just, So there's those two like fundamental physical aspects that is consistent, whether I'm shooting Canon or Nikon. The other thing is my preset is really pretty locked in terms of where my basic sliders are. I will adjust them a little bit, but they are really in the range of highlights pulled back like 50%, shadows boosted like 70, whites almost never touched, and then the black slider pulled back like 60. And so that little formula of pulling back highlights, boosting shadows really doesn't deviate no matter what camera I use. And then the tone curve that I use, which isn't complex at all, it's just a simple S curve, adds a little bit of contrast. And then the fade point in the shadows section is always at this exact same. So the fact that the fade point adds almost this sort of matte, filmish matte look across everything in the shadows, that being consistent across every image adds a huge component of consistency to the look of everything, no matter what camera I'm shooting with. So that never changes. What else? The mix of colors that I kind of mask over midtones and highlights and shadows using the color grading panel, what was previously called split toning, that mix doesn't change either. It's always a little bit of warmer orange colors in the highlights and midtones, and then there's usually a complementary color, like a blue or a green in the shadows. So that stays the same. And, all of those things, even though there's not one major setting that defines the look of my edits, but all of those smaller settings being consistent add up to a very consistent look, in my opinion. That's not to say that occasionally there's not a camera that I'll throw things on and like the reds are way too punchy, and I have a little modifying preset that's like Orange Skin Fix, Orange Skin Fix Plus, Plus Plus, and Plus Plus Plus, depending on how red or orange someone's face is. And if people, just yesterday, we had beautiful light, but anytime I would have the couple being hit directly by the sun, so not backlit, but like facing the sunset light, they were very, very orange and pink because the light was very, very orange and pink. So I had to use that Orange Skin Fix a little bit more than usual, or offset that with a bit more of a cool white balance. You're just constantly playing that game. But what I found is the biggest favor you can do to yourself is, in as far as consistency across camera bodies and anything else, is consistent aperture at the moment of inception, and not deviating much at all from your basics panel, tone curve, and that's it really. The HSL sliders and all that I do tinker with, but I don't have any huge swings for those. Anyway, yeah.
Okay, so what I need to do then for this next attempt with the A7C to see if I can make a photo that feels like me with it is to shoot with the Nocton lens that you lent me, the little baby fella. It's like a 35 f2, I think, maybe. Mm-hmm. It's like you said it had a really nice flare, I think is the one that caught light.
It's a Voigtlander.
Voigtlander Nocton.
Yeah, it's got an awesome flare.
So yeah, I need to do some shooting with that, see how we feel, low aperture, etc. I wonder if Midicon makes a E-mount lens, so I can just, oh my God. Okay, I'm buying a $300 50 millimeter Midicon f.95.
Speaking of $300, we should talk pivoting big time here. I'm not super impressed with the Go 2. I'm not gonna lie.
The Go 2 or the Go 3? The Go 3.
Sorry, Go 3. Yeah.
Okay, talk to me. What were you unimpressed with? I quite like it. I'm having a nice time.
It's battery life way too short. It's like too small. It's like fumblingly small. It's cool that it's so small that you can magnetically attach it to things, but magnet's not rubber banded in there, and you hit it the wrong angle with your arm or something, boom, it goes flying on the ground. There goes your little camera. And it's too small, and the battery life is too short for what I need for something to just set it and forget it for as long as possible on a wedding day. The footage is fine. It's good quality, and it's a wonderful feature now, the free form, where it basically captures everything as a circle the way the 360 camera does, but just from one perspective. That's great. But the other thing is, at least unless I set, maybe I need to adjust the settings more, but I'm pretty sure I tinkered with it and could not figure out a way to, when I take the thing out of the case and I put it on, I want to be able to hit that button and get haptic feedback to know when it's starting and stopping recording. I think the only haptic part is in the case itself.
Yeah, it's a beep and the color changes.
Yeah, I want the color off because it's distracting to have the light on the entire time. So that's a problem. And then I turn the noise off. Maybe I could turn the noise back on, but I also don't want that to distract me or my clients as I'm shooting. With the 360, I just hit a button and I can look at the back of the screen on the thing and see that it's recording or not, and then just forget about it for an hour and a half straight, which is pretty compelling. So it's, I don't know.
The Insta360 Go 3 is the little camera we're talking about. It's their latest action camera that the camera pops out, so you can mount the camera elsewhere while having a small view screen and or longer battery life. So that half hour mark is actually a dream for me, right? So when you pop out the little camera and mount it to yourself, it will record for up to half an hour before dying. It only has 45 minutes of life on its own, and it can only hold half an hour of footage at any time when it's not connected to the base station. For me, that's great because that is, like I'm filming POV walk around town street photography, not I don't know when the nice thing that I'm going to try to put on Instagram is going to come, so I'm going to record 4 hours or whatever you do. How do you get through that footage? Because like editing's the worst.
I wait until I edit the photos, and if it's a photo that I'm really excited about, or that I got a particularly notable number of questions about, I will just scrub to that part of the footage of when that photo happened, plus or minus a minute, and then export from there.
Gotcha. Yeah, man. People complain about editing photos, but editing videos way worse. So much worse.
Yeah. Now, it's not so bad when you get like systems in place and you get to know your keyboard shortcuts.
Once you're a video editor, once it's your job.
Yeah, once it's
I would like to complain once again.
I can knock out a reel in about 10 minutes now. Like, it's fast to do what I need, depending on exactly. But like my standard walk with me reels is nothing. In fact, I'm going to make one probably today to go along with the photos I just posted. I am way behind on sharing. So the best way to start is to just skip over everything that I haven't shared from my most recent weddings.
Oh yeah, 100%. Just start sharing.
Just start. So I shared 10 photos from a shoot yesterday. That was really fun. I got footage from that. And my process is typically do the 10 image carousel and then a reel or two based on one metric that I like to look at with a carousel post. Because you never know exactly which image within the 10 might be the better one or two. I'll jump over to Facebook where it gets auto cross posted, and I'll look at the individual photo interactions there. So if I see one has a notable number of likes compared to something else, I will make a reel from that. If I haven't gotten a signal from comments or just something I personally really like.
Is there enough information in
there? It's super annoying that there's no way to... Instagram has the data of which images later in the carousel do better, because you'll notice if the first one didn't get you to interact with the post, they will shuffle to another one. And it's usually not just the second one. They don't go in order. They'll shuffle to one that other people have been looking at and decided to comment or like the post and surface that as the first one. And I think they'll show you pretty much everybody gets shown a carousel post twice. But anyway, it would be nice if Instagram could break down the data of which image within the carousel is actually doing the best. Just because.
You don't get that information, I'm sorry.
But technically, Facebook does give you that information because they let you like each post. They make it as like a little album. But anyway,
do you miss that?
For anybody listening that wants to do that, the best experience and way to review those is actually on the mobile app, not on desktop. So Facebook on your mobile app will actually show you the likes. At some point, it's super annoying, but Facebook used to let you click into a multi-image post and see it as a grid on desktop, and you could just hover over and see all the like stats and as the grid. But now you have to go one image at a time, which is stupid.
Dreadful.
But on mobile, you can see here, you can just scroll through, and it's still not a grid, which is annoying. But look, see, this one is an outlier. It's got 7 or 8. The first one has none. So this one has 2. It's coming up. This has none. 3. So, I'll monitor this for like a day, and whichever one or two are consistently engaged with the most, I will make a reel from.
That's really rough. That's rough.
How's that rough?
Well, no, I mean, like, great system here, but like you're pulling how many people like your Facebook business page?
100,000.
Yeah, so we're talking 100. Okay, so 120,000, and the signal that you're getting is 7 likes.
Well, it's been up for like 30 minutes. Looking at an older post from like a week ago, Facebook is weird. Like occasionally, the average overall post will get usually a couple hundred likes, and then the per image, like really punching in, averages at best maybe like 50, like a really good one, which is fine. But it is weird because occasionally I'll get something that gets like 2,000 just randomly. I guess it just gets scooped up by the algorithm. But I want to see I'm looking up right now, the average number of people that are reached, like eyeballs on it, that did not engage is about 11,000. So they're giving me almost 10% organic reach, which is better than I would have thought, actually.
That is better than I thought.
But only 10 to 20% of those people will actually engage with the post, and probably only 10 to 20% of those people will actually engage with the specific photo in the carousel.
And
so
even out of all of that 10%, only like 10% of that 10% are real people anyway.
Yeah, sure.
So
no, they're real people. Mm-hmm. The best metric is comments. Like when somebody goes out of their way to leave a comment, you're like, oh, okay.
Comments the best.
Yeah, always.
We love a comment.
Anyway, doesn't matter. In some of that, I guarantee you, Facebook will do things algorithmically that makes this method that I use invalid and not worth it. But for my head, it's just a quick way to commit to a filter that gives me a starting point to like get this reel made and pushed out. That's what I do.
Yeah.
So it took me about a year to develop that kind of vibe. And right alongside that was creating a consistent editing style for the Walk With Me reels. That took a while to figure out. And if you need to do more video and you haven't, you or anybody else listening, Daniel, InShot is a wonderful app, iOS based. It's by far, there's another one I think called Clip or Clip something. I don't know, that people
do you
really
mean
like
CapCut?
for making CapCut. Yeah. I
yeah,
think
that's
so.
TikTok's editor.
Yeah. But I find InShot to be just delightful and surprisingly capable for a mobile editor.
Okay,
it's a little
so
frustrating,
here's my problem.
But
I don't like any editor. Okay, so here's my thing. I don't really want to use an iPhone or an iPad because it's not great for it on purpose. But also, you know what I don't need to use? Final Cut Pro. You know what I'm using? Final Cut Pro. You know what I shouldn't be using? Final Cut Pro. I don't need that much, man. I'm not making a Hollywood film here. I'm cutting
Well,
together.
DaVinci Resolve is my favorite desktop app, and it's really capable. The free version is super, super capable. That's all you'd really need. But DaVinci Resolve, the way it arranges itself, like the workflow, just makes a lot more intuitive sense than Final Cut. It's not too overwhelming unless you want it to be. You can make it very pro. But
I would love to be overwhelmed. That's my go-to.
But I'm telling you, the InShot is a fairly capable and not frustrating video editor for mobile. I know what you mentioned. Like video editing was not meant to be a thing so much on iPad or iPhone, but it does work well. They figured it out. So
I would just like not to need to do that. I'm going to throw my pity party here.
Well, there's another app I've been meaning to try. Maybe I'll try it today.
It's called Fiverr, where you pay someone.
Yeah, that's actually not the worst idea. But it's called Camzoro. It's AI video editing. So
Camzoro. Does Antonio Banderas.
Face recognition, emotion detection, multi-camera syncing. I might have to try that. But somebody, it was just on a Reddit group, was talking about how their Fiverr business was eviscerated because they would basically do the basics of what Camzoro does now. And so, yeah, if it's replacing some aspect of what was previously required of a human, that's probably a good starting point. And I'm sure you'll still have to tweak it from there, but I'm going to give it a try.
Might give it a try. We might become video editors. This might become endless video editing because that's what it feels like.
I know. I just recorded 4 videos a couple days ago that were the most tedious, and I was dreading forever. It was the setup videos for Insight.
Yeah.
So from that, I'm also going to create the like step-by-step thumbnail, like article form.
Yeah.
But the videos were tedious because though they're different cameras, I basically had to do the exact same video 4 times in a row, explaining stuff. Yeah, but they only ended up being about like 5 minutes each. So I'm hoping, again, with Insight, the biggest hurdle is going to be just getting people's cameras set up initially, and I'm hoping it's not too big of a hurdle that people just don't even bother using the product. But I'm trying to make it easy, and video I think is the best way to do it. Second runner-up is definitely the article form. But it's surprising. I thought for me, Canon was going to be the best and easiest in terms of setting up your FTP. But honestly, the new Nikon menus,
And we've lost Sam. He has disappeared. He said, and the new Nikon, I assume what he is saying is that the new Nikon is so swimmingly great that he just, did it. And he loved it. And,
That was weird.
The new Nikon thing was so good that he had to run away. He just
That was so
evacuated
weird.
the
It
space.
literally just said no internet connection, and I never lost internet. It was still connected. That was odd. Sorry about that.
I wonder how much of that is gonna make it in our upload versus get cut.
I think you didn't lose connection.
Oh, I didn't lose connection. I was here. I meant because it's at 99% uploading or whatever. So
what I was saying was the Nikon and Sony FTP setup is a breeze. So much more intuitive and fast and easy compared to Canon. Canon's is a confusing cluster. It's shocking to me. And honestly, using Nikon again the past couple months has made me recall just how much better the menu and overall GUI is and has always been better on Nikon than Canon. I'm just going to say it now. Nikon has the best. Yeah. Sony just revamped theirs, and it looks, or I don't know, it's probably been a year or so, but it looks pretty good. Definitely better than it used to be. But man, Canon's got to freaking catch up. And I think we've talked about this before, but I'm just so disappointed that all manufacturers, or at least Canon and Nikon, didn't use the mirrorless body launch as a refresh point for their software side of things. That would have been perfect timing.
Woulda, shoulda.
Shoulda, yeah.
Well, we don't get nice things, Wait, how many cameras do you have for testing right now for Insight? Have you purchased 800 cameras to then return in B&H's window?
No, not many. Just 3. The Sony with the new menu, Sony with the old menus, Nikon Z8, which is on loan from Nikon, and that's it.
Oh.
I'm going to have to do a couple more Canon videos because Canon's also not only worse menus, but the least consistent from one model to the next. They change up the naming and location of things in their menus all the time. It's hilarious. And they'll just change the name of the exact same feature that exists in one camera to the next. It's why? Why are you changing the name on me? I just got used to your old awkward name.
You asked for them to change and to improve, Sam. They heard you. They listened. They did it.
Yeah, we don't need iterative change. We need a giant overhaul. That is what's needed. All good. We'll get there.
One day.
So back to sharpness.
Back to sharpness. I don't know what camera to do. So I'm trying to create photos that look like me, that fit this vibe that I have with the GFX. This is partially because of the baseball stadium photo project I was talking about. A few are very, very strict about the type of camera that you can bring into the stadium. And the main marker for that is a lens that is 6 inches or shorter. And the Midicon is exactly 6 inches. But I don't, do I just show up with a ruler? Right?
I was going to say, I can't wait for you to whip out the measuring tape.
Yeah, be like, okay, well, no, here it is at 5.7.
There's a rule like that for national parks as well, where you don't need a permit. I'm like, do you, how... I bet you if you put up any resistance in terms of having knowledgeability about hey, I researched this, you can test me if you want, but
yeah, I can't imagine
the stats. Yeah.
that they're, but I also, because all of these places, are going to be traveling, right? I'm going to be traveling to these places. The only one that I'm not going to be traveling to specifically is Baltimore, Camden Yards, because it's a mile and a half down the road from my house. If they say no, and for whatever reason they get a bee in their bonnet about it, I won't be able to return home and drop the camera. And I don't want to be okay, well, I'm parked, right? It'll be a weird... So I'm trying to account for this. And then also I would like to be able to replicate this vibe and style with other camera bodies. And, I know that one of the things that's happening here is the 100 megapixel sensor is working literal magic because it's a beautiful wonderful sensor, and Fuji renders it wonderfully. And I know that. So I have to get as close as I can without,
Yeah.
So
You'll get there. I have the Canon mount version of that Midicon 50.95.
Oh, well, that would have been helpful to me if I had a Canon camera.
Well, I think it would adapt to the Sony just fine. I don't know. I have to see. I don't know where it is, though.
Well, it's too late. I already ordered one for $300 from KEH.
Nice. All right.
That's a nice time to go into our sponsor, read KEH.com, your only spot. I'm just kidding. We don't have that.
We don't have a sponsor. Okay. Well, I got to catch a train.
All right.
It's becoming my almost like my classic go-to tagline to wrap these up.
Gotta catch a train. He's a train man.
Catch a train. I'm telling you, folks, if you don't live on the East Coast, give it a consideration. The train has proven.
Yeah. Move to the East Coast. Move to Baltimore. Become my neighbor. Become Sam's neighbor. Live halfway between Sam and I. That would be great. If one of you could move
Hamden's a great neighborhood. Yeah.
Right way. That'd be great.
I think Hamden's about halfway.
Oh my God, it is.
Yeah.
That's where our photo walk's going to be.
Oh, awesome. Well, send me the dates because I want to come for the glass photo walk.
Yeah. And also the New York one. So,
awesome.
New York will be in New York. Anyway, adios, amigo. Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.